everyone. Welcome back to Doorway to Discovery, the Whitby Public Library podcast. We are so happy to have you back. And today, friends, we are talking about graphic novels. So we all read a different graphic novel this month. And Shelby, do you want to kick us off? What'd you read?
I can. I read Anya's Ghost. The basic concept of this book is we have Anya here. She is a Russian immigrant. Her and her mother and her brother all came over from Russia when she was, I want to say, about grade 5, and now she's in high school. So she has kind of lost her accent, and she's very Americanized and is trying to step outside of the Orthodox Russian community. And she does that by like not going to church or like changing the way she dresses or not eating traditional food. And one day after school, she is, I cannot actually remember why she is running here. I'm gonna like check why she's in this area. I think she's just taking like a shortcut home from school. So I have read this full book, okay? She's taking a shortcut home from school and she starts like running through the field and she falls into a pit. And at the bottom of it, when she wakes up, there's a ghost. And the ghost basically says like, I was doing the same thing as you about 100 years ago and I fell in here and I didn't land right. So it is a teen graphic novel, and it's actually very creepy. Like, by the end of it, I was actually kind of terrified. Like, the ghost in it, you find out, should I spoil it? I'm not going to spoil it. I mean,
no, don't spoil it.
I'm not going to spoil it. But basically, she gets out of the hole, and a piece of the, like, body that was there, she, like, puts a bone in her backpack, and now this ghost can, like, follow her everywhere. She's, like, has, like, different sizes, and she, like, you know, it's fun at first. She like helps her with school and like helps her with boys and like does all of this, but then she starts to get really creepy and she's like, oh, you should do this and you should do that. And she's like, I don't want to do those things, like not really comfortable with that. And yeah, the ghost just gets creepier and creepier until she's like, you got to go back where you came from because you're ruining my life. And there's a little bit of investigativeness. And what I thought was really cool, to end my little tangent, is at one point they have to go to the library, of course. And what's more, they have to go to the microfilm section to go through all of the old newspapers. And I'm going to see if I can find the like imagery. It's all in black and white, by the way. The imagery is beautiful. Everything is just honestly so good. It's such an easy read, such a quick read. But it's just honestly, it was really good. And it had like this little tutorial on microfilm, which I mean, I don't know a lot about microfilm. I probably should know more now that I work in reference. But here they are using the little like microfilm machine to go through all the old newspapers. And I just thought it was like so fun. There's this little like lesson on how to use it, and like it was really good. And in the end, she kind of like gets back to her community. There's another little boy that goes to her school that's in the same grade, but he came much later, so he still has his accent, still has a lot of the things that are different culturally and important in different areas of the world are still a part of who he is. And they kind of reconnect in this book, and she reconnects to her community a little bit, and you get a nice little scare. So if you're looking for kind of a bit of both worlds and kind of getting to just have fun along the way, and I recommend this because it was a really good quick read and it kept me interested the entire way through.
What I read this month was Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. So Octavia Butler is one of my favorite like sci-fi authors just because of the one book I read by her, Kindred. If you have not read that book, go and read it. It's fabulous. It's about this woman who time travels suddenly without any choice, and she goes back to 19th century America, and she is a slave, an enslaved person. And she all of a sudden is just like thrown into this situation where she needs to deal with the realities of slavery. And she's from the 1970s, and she goes back in time, and then she'll just randomly be pulled back out into her regular life, and she has no control over when this happens. And it's a fantastic book. I'm not a very fast reader, and that book, Kindred, I read in like a day, 2 days. Like, I just devoured that book. So I was really excited to read this graphic novel, The Parable of the Sower, which is a graphic novel adaptation of her book. And it's a really interesting concept. It's very different from Kindred. It's about America in 2024 and 2025 is where it starts. So I don't remember exactly when it was written, but I think it was like before the 2000s, so that was a bit farther off. But basically, it's a very divided America that's like kind of fallen. We're talking about water shortages, and there's an intense class divide. So she lives in a cul-de-sac neighborhood that has like walls around it, and that keeps out the people that are diseased or addicted to a drug called pyro.
Disease?
Yeah. Disease. Yeah, there are like pictures. It's pretty creepy.
So
the art style is amazing.
In 2024, is that what you just told me?
That's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So Octavia,
I'll be waiting until 2026 to read this.
exactly. Once you know it's safe. So basically, the concept of the book is this main character. She has intense empathy, or I can't remember the exact word for it, but basically she feels other people's pain, literally. So anytime she leaves her walled neighborhood and sees these people that are diseased or suffering, she feels it intensely. And her father is a minister, and he's very religious, but she doesn't quite believe in Christianity. And so the whole book is structured around her journal, in which she's kind of creating her own religious beliefs. So she's writing what she believes God is. And so the whole book is like framed around her thoughts about God and religion and the empathy that she feels for people. It's a fantastic book, and the writing is so beautiful, and the art is so good. So it's a really good one, but it is a serious departure from other Octavia Butler if you liked Kindred. But it's a great sci-fi post-apocalyptic book, so highly recommend.
Is it on Hoopla? Like, is it a digital?
Yes, it is a digital audiobook. So that means that if you are a patron of the Whitby Library, or pretty much any library that has access to Hoopla, it is available at all times. So you can look at it online, or you can download it to your device on Hoopla.
And the cool thing about Hoopla's like graphic novel is that you can like zoom in to all of the images, and like you can interact with the book in a different way than like a typical ebook would be. So Hoopla's interface is set up to like interact with the text, which my first like downloadable graphic novel that I ever read was on Hoopla, and it was so beautiful, and it was so fun to get to like look at the tiny little like things that are happening within the background. Like a lot of graphic novels, like there's just so much detail that you kind of want to give time to the art.
What did you read, Erin?
Good question. So I read Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. And of course, I went pure fluff. Like everyone always picks such like thought-provoking, amazing books. And I just read something that made me so happy. So essentially, it follows the main character, whose name is Charlie. And he is he's British, he's English, and he's in year 11, I believe, so grade 11. And he came out last year to the high school, and he got bullied like really bad for it, unfortunately. And the book kind of starts, he's got this sort of like on and off secret relationship with another boy from the school named Ben. And unfortunately, like Ben just treats him horribly and wants to keep everything a secret. And Charlie's trying to be understanding, being like, I know we're young and you're not comfortable with coming out yet, and that's fine, but like you still have to treat me better. So there's like that whole thing. And so he meets I think his name is Nick. So then one day Charlie interacts with this kid named Nick, who's a year above him in school, and he's like a popular jock, and he plays rugby, and they're in the same class or something, and they just sort of like strike up this friendship. And it's really beautiful. It's so sweet. So there's four installments. It's not a really long book. It only took me about an hour to read it in total, but honestly, the entire time, I just had this like giddy smile on my face, and the art is so sweet, and it's all done in these like pinks and greens and blues, and it's really pretty. And the development of their relationship. So they start off as friends. It is a romance, so it's kind of like, you know, you can interpret that they will ultimately start dating, but their friendship is very organic and it's really lovely. And so, you know, like Nick gets him to like join the rugby team, and they have these like really sweet moments together. And the artist and the author does a really lovely job of sort of like zooming in on like casual touches and like flirty glances and all of that, which is really lovely. And it kind of feels like you're watching like from behind the scenes. But what I really like, besides the representation, is that everyone just assumes that Nick is straight, and you kind of get the vibe that Nick thinks he's straight as well. So I have read the second one, and I have the third downloaded. I don't want to like spoil anything for you guys, but it is like an interesting concept of sort of like maybe questioning your own sexuality and like what that looks like. And regardless, it's a really lovely story, and their friendship is beautiful and so organic and cute, and I loved it so much. It just made me so happy. And I also just found out that they're turning it into a TV show. I think it's coming to Netflix. So it's going to be really cute. I can't wait to watch. But yeah, if you guys want just like a quick little pick me up and something that's going to put a smile on your face, pick up Heartstopper. It's adorable. You won't regret it. And then someone else can talk.
So pretty.
And you know, there's a lot of graphic novels that are like that now, that are just like really quick. They'll just lift you up. Like there's one that I have here that I read in like an hour, and it just made me so stinking happy. It's The Prince and the Dressmaker.
It's on my list.
It's so good.
I love it. It's just so cute. It's just like so wholesome and nice. And it's just a prince that wants to dress up in dresses and be like in fashion shows. And then he meets a girl who like can put together costumes. And so then they just work together, and he like makes this whole like secret identity where he goes on stage and he's wearing dresses and stuff. And it's just like, it's just nice. That's all. It's just really nice. And it just put a smile on my face, and it just makes me happy.
I know I read another one recently. I think it was called Mooncakes.
Yes.
Yeah. So cute.
And it was really cute too. And like, I mean, I don't think this is just indicative of graphic novels in general, but I think a lot of literature that deals with, and it's not just like queer literature, it's also just like multicultural literature and stuff, whereas unfortunately, these are like usually marginalized groups of people who often have a lot of trauma or like really negative experiences, which is horrible and really unfair to them. But I like the way that fiction, I've noticed, is going, where it's just like a happy story. Mm-hmm. And while it's really important to talk about the trauma and the horrible experiences of marginalized people, it's also really, really nice to see something positive too. And I think that also just sort of like normalizes it in a lot of ways, because it's a nice story, and everyone deserves like a happy, nice story. And that's what made me so happy about this, is like, it was just so stinking cute. Like, I can't wait till my dinner break so I can start the third one. Like, that's kind of where I'm at. So I love like the happiness of it and the wholesomeness of it and the sweetness. And yeah, so that's just my little 2 cents. But
there are a lot of really happy queer graphic novels. Yeah. And I love that. Like there's the one that, it corrects me on the title. It's like the Magical Dragon Tea Society. I know Kylie read it. If she was here, she could help. She'll know what I'm talking about. She can just bring in the cover here. But it was so cute. It was a really short one. Again, I think we have it on Hoopla. It took me that one took me 15 minutes to read. It was very, very short. And it was just like queer representation and just like really cute dragons. And they were just drinking tea. These dragons were like, they each represented a tea. And so then they had like leaves on them or something that they needed to harvest to make tea, but then they would just regrow. It was just very cute. There's that one. There's one, I'm not sure if we have it in our collection, but we should order it, called The Life of Melody. That's a fantasy queer book that was just so cute. It was like an elf and then like a werewolf. I don't remember if I have their names right, but it's like an elf and a werewolf, and they just find a human child and they name her Melody, and they hate each other. It's an enemies to lovers because they adopt this child together because they both are like, I called him. And then they just start co-parenting this child, and it's such a cute book. And like, I feel like it's a really nice way to read queer literature and just like be happy about it, because like I feel like you can make just really quick, happy, and beautiful stories through the method of graphic novel storytelling, you know?
I agree. And I've noticed that a lot with graphic novels too. Like Mooncakes is queer as well, and she's a witch, and like she's a werewolf, and it's like okay, horrible. And it's just, you know, they're fighting dragons. I don't know. It's absolutely sweet. But yeah, you're right. I do notice that a lot, and I love the representation, and I love that it's happy. Just put a smile on my face, please. There's enough going on in the world. But also Anya's Ghost sounds amazing, and I'm immediately adding it to my list. So
I wonder if it's just like the community of graphic novelists, and that's the reason why it is so diverse and like colorful and so different than regular fiction.
yeah.
Like I'm not going to say that anybody can write general fiction, but like anybody can write general fiction, right? Like,
I mean, it's good, but you're not wrong.
anybody can put words on a page. You know what I mean? Like I have definitely read some things where I'm like, I'm not a creative writer, but I could have definitely written that better. However, with a graphic novel, you don't have that same, like, you don't have that same like ability. Like you need to be able to craft it with imagery, and you're dealing with little snippets of text and then relying on what's going on there. And I think
right, like ultimately they're artists first.
Yes, it's their art to show this story. And I think for the longest time the graphic novel and even now is the graphic novel community is just very much so like underplayed or like underappreciated. And I think it's because people just A, don't know what to look for, and B, don't know that it's there. Like the other day I was sitting on desk up in Reference, which has our adult graphic novel collection is upstairs in the main library. And I was sitting there and I had a stack of graphic novels because I had to pick something for today. And I think Nimona was actually on top, and a parent came up to me and she said, "Can I look at this for a second?" And I was like, yeah, go for it. Look at it. And she was like, "I didn't know that that this came in something for like older people. I thought it was just for little kids." And I was like, no. Like you can, like, I can show you like our adult graphic novel section. Like it is so cool. And so I took her over and she was like, "I didn't even know that. Like this is so amazing." And then another thing that's fun about graphic novels, a lot of times they're turned into TV shows. So I was showing her everything. I was like, we have Walking Dead. She's like, "Oh my gosh, Walking Dead. I didn't know Walking Dead was turned into a graphic novel." And I was like, actually, The Walking Dead was a graphic novel series and they turned it into a TV show. But the one thing I will say, and you do need to keep in mind, if you are an adult walking into an adult graphic novel section, I would recommend just paging through the imagery.
Yes.
B, ask somebody if you don't know, like just kind of like give her a holler and we'll come over and point you towards some stuff. Because you can either get what we're talking about, which is the very like fluffy, nice, beautiful, or you can get graphically violent and like
or graphically other things.
It's different than reading, right?
So graphic. So, I mean, this isn't typically an issue for us over at the Central Library, but for instance, if you're in Brooklyn, our teen manga and graphic novel section is actually right beside our adult graphic novel section. So keep that in mind if your kids are into manga, because you don't want them going over to the adult fiction graphic novel section and then finding things that might not be appropriate for their age group. But there's so much stuff, like even the teen section for graphic novels is so big and diverse and amazing. Like I think all three of the ones that I have here with me are all teen graphic novels, and they are amazing. The one thing I will say, we do also have, and I didn't know this was a thing, nonfiction graphic novels, which is really cool. And something that I think is interesting because I'm sure there are people out there who have teenagers in high school who are going to be studying some classics that are hard to digest, and a lot of times now they're coming out with graphic novel versions of them, which I think is a great way to learn classics because you're getting that imagery. Oh my gosh, which one do you have? The Great Gatsby?
The Great Gatsby. So yeah, there are tons of them though. This was just one I picked because I love The Great Gatsby, and I was like,
yeah,
so cool. But yeah, there are tons.
Yeah, it's so cool, and it's a great way to kind of bridge that gap, especially if your child is having a hard time understanding what's going on or getting into the story. Like, I would definitely recommend a nonfiction graphic novel.
And
Yeah.
what you were saying about nonfiction graphic novels, there's one that's the Louis Riel comic strip biography that I read this summer, and it was fantastic. Like, it gave such a thorough account of that amazing Canadian history about Louis Riel and his rebellion and everything, and it was just all in comic strip form. So it was just so informative. Sorry, I cut you off, Erin.
No, you're good. I wanted to agree with Shelby. I feel like people really discount them too. And like ultimately, if you sit there and you think about some of the more popular things like in our media now, a lot of them are graphic novels. Like can we talk about how Marvel literally rules the world, but they were all graphic novels first?
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah. And the point that people are turning like really popular stories like into graphic novels as well. So for instance, like I work in the children's and adult fiction department, and I notice like a lot of kids are really hesitant to pick up, say, Percy Jackson, because they're like, I've heard this is amazing, but like this is a big book. And I'm like, did you know that Percy Jackson was turned into a graphic novel series? You can still get the story, but just in a different format that appears more palatable for kids, I think, but also like secretly really helps with like their reading comprehension and like a whole bunch of other stuff, especially for kids who are struggling with reading, because like then they can put the image to the story and like learn a different way. I think it's fantastic. Yeah, they shouldn't be discounted, I don't think.
Well, I mean, like all literature, like it's going to increase your vocabulary, but what's something a graphic novel can do that a regular novel can't do is introduce harder language at a younger age, because you're able to like deduce what's happening in the imagery. So if your kids are having a hard time with their vocabulary and you want them to expand, graphic novels are a really great place to start, because they seem so simple. Like this is Nimona, and like there's really not that much text on the page, but when you start to like actually look at the like what they're saying and like the content that they're talking about, it is a lot more mature than you would probably see in a lot of instances. So like I can't tell you how many times parents will come up to us and they'll be like, my kids are having a hard time reading, like what do I do? And I go, have you tried a graphic novel?
Yeah,
they're so cool and they're so fun and so many kids love it. I'm like, I don't care if it's Dogman, okay? It's a starting point and it's fun and the kids adore it. So if your kid is reading, that's it, right? They read.
Yeah.
And not even for kids, like teens and adults. Like if you're not a reader, maybe try a graphic novel, because like oftentimes like you can get really long ones. Like I think Kate, you were saying yours is like 300 pages.
Yeah.
And like Heartstopper was like 100 pages, but it still only took me like an hour to read. Not even, like I think maybe 45 minutes. So it's still like a decent chunk of time, but you're still like absorbing that story. I think they're absolutely fantastic. And there's also, I see it definitely more in kids fiction too, like graphic novel hybrid novels too, I think are good. So you've got like big, like I'm thinking kids stories, but like the Big Nate books, or like the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, or
Dork Diaries.
Yeah. And even like the Geronimo Stiltons too, because like some of the words are like colored, and you know, like boom will be like boom, and like there's pictures added to it. So like there's a lot of like those hybrids too, to kind of like ease into reading. And I also find graphic novels are great at like pulling me out of a reading slump too. Like if I can't really sit down and like focus on anything, I'll be like, you know what, graphic novel, an hour. You know, now I'm really into a story, like now I'm ready for another story, I can start a different book or whatever. So I don't know. I think they're fantastic, and they're discounted, unfortunately.
And it's so
absolutely
satisfying to be like, oh yeah, I just read a graphic novel, and your Goodreads is like, oh, you're one step closer to your goal. And you're like, yeah, and I read that in an hour.
Right?
So like they're great. And I mean, I have one here, it's called On a Sunbeam, and it's like 500 pages long. It's got chapters in it. It is a chaptered book. Like you go through the different sections. I know my partner is not a reader. I think he's maybe read like 5 books in his entire life, and I've always wanted him to read, and he has never of his own volition picked up a book. The only time I have ever seen this man read, okay, is because he was reading webtoons, which are webcomics, and he just, all he had to do was scroll and read, and he was immersed in that story for hours. He would just sit there and read, and it was amazing. I have not seen him do that. So, I mean, it's so simple, and especially if it's on Hoopla, you can pick up your phone, read an entire graphic novel in 15 minutes, put it down, you're done, and it's right there. Honestly, like, they're some of my favorite stories because they just kind of have the ability to be different in a lot of different ways.
I agree. And whatever gets you reading, right? And don't let anybody tell you that a graphic novel is not reading. And I will also like argue to my dying breath that audiobooks are books too. Like
They
whatever,
Yeah.
like gesting a story in whatever format you like. Shelby, I'm curious because like my partner as well is not a reader, which is very odd for us because all I do is read, and all he does is he games as well, but like he loves like role-playing games that are like story-based. So like he's still getting similar content that I am. We're just getting it in a different format. But now I'm sitting here being like, is there a Mass Effect graphic novel that I can get to try and get him to read?
I mean, we do have, I actually have an adult graphic novel. Oh my gosh, 1 second. My partner wanted
Is that Dune?
Yes, it is. Wanted to read Dune, and I, by accident, put the graphic novel on hold. So if you want to read Dune, but you look at that massive brick of a book and go, heck no, we have a graphic novel for you.
I would love to. I love that because it's like a brick. I think that book's like 1,000 pages, and that can be a massive deterrent, especially if you're not a reader. I didn't even know it was a graphic novel.
And it comes in volumes. So like this is only volume 1. So you're getting like a smaller one. It's not as intimidating. It's not as like chunky as this guy, but it is like, this is my first time opening it. It's literally just been sitting on his side table. The imagery is absolutely beautiful. There's a good amount of text on each page. Like this looks like a really good introduction to the story to kind of get you into it. Because a lot of times with those like brick of a book classics, they're dense. There's a lot of description. It's hard to get into. You're falling asleep. Like, I get it. I've watched my dad fall asleep with a book on his face. I just hit myself. You know what I mean?
So we want like a Harry Potter graphic novel?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do
We
have
have
a illustrated novel.
Yes, the illustrated editions, but they're not like,
It's not the
They're
same.
not. And
they're not
like,
the whole story.
just so the listeners know, like an illustrated edition of a book is literally a reprint of the book. Like there's no differentiating to the texts one way or the other. You just get like every other page, you get like a really beautiful like painting or illustration or whatever, which I think is great because it can kind of give you like a snapshot of what's going on like at that point in the story. But again, it's the same amount of text as the novel. So they're great, but definitely not the same as a graphic novel. But I would die to see Harry Potter turned into graphic novels because they turned Twilight into graphic novels.
They did it.
Did they?
We have them.
What? And we
Yeah.
didn't do
They're
it?
like they're drawn in like anime style. They're beautiful. I think they maybe only did the first book. To be completely honest, it's done in like 2 volumes, unfortunately. But yeah, they did. They turned Twilight into a graphic novel. We have it in our teen section.
All right. And that is our program for you guys today. All about graphic novels and some really fun ones that we really enjoy. If you read any of these ones, please be sure to tell us because we love to hear your thoughts. And as always, we will have a complete list of all of the books that we talked about here today in the description down below. You can also visit us at whitbylibrary.ca under WPL Suggests to see all of our lists that go back, yes, all the way from 2021. And because we have all these phenomenal graphic novels, we do have a winter reading challenge that's wrapping up on March 21st. So you could get a whole bunch in right before the end of the reading challenge. So pick a bunch of these guys, read them at home, enter the reading challenge. And
Look at how skinny this one is. You can find so many like that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you're listening to us, Kate just held up a very small graphic novel.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Here, the title is Paul is Dead. It was very good.
Good, love it. We always have book clubs going on. We have a whole bunch of new sets that were just picked out by the book club committee. There's so many amazing ones. They're introducing some really great books, so make sure to head on over to our programs and services to see what those are. We have them at all 3 locations in nonfiction, murder, mystery, everything you can possibly think of. We are here to help you. Remember to always follow us on social media and make sure to subscribe down below and like us. And of course, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns or recommendations, you can always email us. Our email is down below. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us today, and we'll see you in April.
Bye.
Bye, folks.